I'm going to take an image that I created in Illustrator and open it in Photoshop. Now, we've done this before, but I'd like for you to try it again and try to make it a little more elaborate maybe than we did the first time. I've got this coffee cup that I used over here on my smartboard. I'm just going to select that, and to start with, I'm going to make it bigger. I want to make it quite a bit bigger. If you make it bigger, then your Photoshop file can be bigger, and so I'm going to make it bigger. It's a vector file, but I'm going to make it bigger right here. I'm going to copy that just using Command C. Right, then I'm going to go over to Photoshop that I already have running over here, and I'll do New, File New. Now, the way this works is Photoshop knows what you've got in your clipboard, and so it knows already that I have copied that file. I set my resolution up high. Okay, that also gives me more flexibility in Photoshop. Right, so I opened it, or I made it a higher resolution. These sizes are inherited from what you've got in your clipboard. Right, if you leave the preset to clipboard. Okay, and you can see that it's set that way. Okay, and I'll go ahead and name this one coffee underscore cup. You know, this is a Photoshop file, and I don't know if everybody's working with Photoshop this semester, but I'll try to go slow enough here that you can see what I'm doing. I'll just go ahead and OK that. Now it has jumped to this big canvas in Photoshop, and if I just paste that image in, now I would put it on pixels. It'll give you a little more flexibility. You could do it in Smart Objects, but pixels it's a little more direct, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm not interested in making them paths or a shape layer or anything like that, so I'm just going to keep with pixels. What it'll do is it'll bring in this image with the X across, indicating that it's kind of a preliminary image. If you click right here to commit, now you really do have a layer that is the same as that image that you brought over, or it has the same appearance as that image. It's not vectors anymore, though. It's a bitmap image. Now what that means is you can erase through it, you can recolor it, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. You can change the color of your background. If you click on the background here, for example, and then I'll grab the paint bucket under the gradient tool, and if I wanted to put a black background here, whatever color you've got for your foreground color, it'll change it to black. That's my background. Okay, you can use a different color if you prefer, and paint bucket and make it a new color. Okay, so any color that you want for your background, it'll do it. Okay, that's a little hard to look at, so I'm going to go with something maybe a little cooler. Let's see what maybe this looks like. Yeah, a little better. Okay, I'm just going to reduce it down so it's a little smaller on the page. Okay, this image, if you go to image size up here, it's a pretty good size. It's 8 by 9 and it's at 300, so that's a pretty good size image. I could print it at that size and it would be very sharp. Okay, now let's see what we can do to work this image over. I'm going to click back up here on my main layer. This is the layer where I pasted that in. And anything you know how to do in Photoshop, you can continue to do here. You could smudge the image, you could blur the image, you could add special effects to it, you could do all that stuff. I'm going to go with some really simple, sort of straightforward painting things. I don't like to paint right on top of the image, so I'm going to create a new layer. There's a little button at the bottom of the Layers panel, Create a New, and you can create a new layer with that button right there. Okay, so I just created a new layer, but I'm going to come back down to this layer to do my selecting. So if I don't really want white for my ceramic for the cup, I can use maybe something like my magic wand tool, very quick at selecting flat colors. And so I can click here and you can see I've got the white of the cup and the saucer. If I hold my shift key down here, I can click that part, I can click this part. I can even click this part, all the white shapes of the image. Then go back up to my layer 2 for doing any coloring that you want to do here. Now, and again, anything you know how to do, you can do here. I'm just going to use a paintbrush, and I'll grab myself a new color, maybe something red, like that. I've got a big brush here. Remember, you can make your brushes bigger with the right bracket tool, make them smaller with the left bracket tool, and make them soft with shift left bracket. And I've got a soft, so I've got soft color here, and I'm just going to come around like this maybe and color that way. Okay, now all I've done is just paint that little bit right there. Okay, isn't that neat? I can select areas off this layer and then apply the paint over here. Okay, now, and I like to have a new layer for every color, so I'm going to make a new color. I'm going to make a new layer. I'll select a kind of a yellow color this time, and maybe paint in on the cup part here. Try to put some yellow. That's not a very pretty yellow, is it? Let's see if I can get a little better yellow here. You can use your any method for coloring that you want. You could definitely use the swatches if you'd rather to get a really pure yellow there. Okay, so I've added a little yellow in here. Now I'm using the same selection on that, but you don't have to. If you want, you can create a new selection. Just go down here and deselect. That's Command D, and you can select any other method that you want. If I decide maybe I just want the maybe I want the black areas selected, so I use my magic wand here, and I'm back on the main layer, and I'm going to select. Now it's selecting almost all the black with one click. I want to add that little black and this little black, and again, rather than applying it straight on top here, I'll create a new layer, and maybe I'll grab like a gray color or something out of here. And change my blacks from black to gray, and I'll use my paintbrush, make a big old brush, maybe a little bit darker. That doesn't look like a very dark gray. Okay, and I'll just make all of those a darker gray, or yeah, a gray. Okay, and you can see if I go over here, hold my Option key down, it's just those areas that I've changed to gray. If I deselect, you'll see it does a very good job. It does a very good job of selecting those colors. And I've got the red that I've added on this layer, and the yellow that I've added on this layer, and the gray that I've added on this layer. And I mean, you can just do this as many times as you want. Plus, it's erasable. If you get on the red and you go, boy, that part right there is not right, go to the eraser, and you can erase parts of it. So if you don't want the red to be up here, you can take it back off. And maybe you don't want the yellow to be over here, you can erase it back off. I've got a low opacity on my eraser, so let me turn that up so you can maybe see what I'm doing. Just taking off some of those colors. There's from the red layer, I'm taking off some of the red. From the yellow layer, I'm taking off some of the yellow. And let's say maybe I don't like this gray shadow here. I'll go back to my main layer. Use that magic wand. Works very good for flat colors. That's the reason I'm using it. I can click here. Now I've got the gray off the front of the cup. But again, I'll make it on its own layer. I'll just make a new layer using that same new layer button down there. And maybe I'll go to a kind of a bluish color for this shadow instead of a flat gray. And paintbrush, shortcut B for brush. You can make that blue. Okay, so now you can see I've got a pretty psychedelic looking cup here, but all of these layers are still, you can do anything with them that you know how to do, and I encourage you to experiment with it. For one thing that's really simple, you can just make them less opaque. And so now I'm letting some of the black come back through on the gray layer. Okay, by making that layer less than fully opaque, I made it 50%. I didn't do anything with the coffee in the cup there. If you wanted to select it, just go back to it. magic wand. Now I've selected the brown of the coffee. I'm going to create a new layer. Coffee's almost always brown, so I'm not sure exactly what color to add here, but I'm going to add maybe some dark red. Use a brush on that layer, and I can add some red in there like that. Okay. Now he's drinking, I don't know, some kind of red tea, right? And that, like I said, that's all. You can change the opacity of that. You could even change. You could change the blending mode if you change the blending mode to something like hue, and now it's blending the red with the brown. Okay, we've looked at these in our class. You can do anything you want to with those blending modes. You could also, let's see what would look good. If I selected, I don't know if this is going to work, but if I click on the image, remember you can also add bevels and shadows and things like that to it. Yeah, doesn't look real believable, but maybe something like an outer glow, maybe. If I can find it, there it is. Okay, click on the word outer glow, and you can make the size of the outer glow bigger. Okay, so all that stuff that you know how to do, you can do with an image that was originally created in Illustrator. And people do this all the time. In fact, sometimes they'll even bring this image back into the Illustrator file, put it maybe on top of the other drawing. So I mean, you can just go back and forth as much as you want.